Okay, welcome back to the Free Brain Podcast, the show where we explore the big questions that shape how we live, think, and feel, including the ones that keep us up at night, literally. Sleeping is one of the most important things that we can do. We spend a third of our entire lives, in a sleep state. It is profoundly important to the human body. The body breaks down and forces you to sleep if you do not sleep. If you've ever lain in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the clock tick past 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., wondering why sleep won't come despite how exhausted you are not alone. And millions of people battle chronic insomnia. That frustrating cycle of racing thoughts, anxiety about not sleeping, and the exhaustion that follows you into the next day. For far too long, the go-to answers have been sleeping pills or hoping it will magically get better. But what if the real solution isn't in a pill, but in understanding and retraining the thoughts, behaviors, and habits that actually fuel insomnia? The patterns of our lives that cause the stresses. That's where modern behavioral sleep medicine comes in. And today we're diving deep into one of the most effective, evidence-based approaches available, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBT-I for short. I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Boris Dubrovsky, PhD. Dr. Dubrovsky is a clinical psychologist and board-certified specialist in behavioral sleep medicine, CBSM. He earned his PhD in psychology from the CUNY Graduate Center with a focus on cognitive neuroscience and sleep. He completed his postdoctoral training at Weill Cornell Medical College and New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, where he now serves as Associate Director of the Center for Sleep Disorders. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Dr. Dubrovsky helps patients overcome chronic insomnia and circadian rhythm disorders using non-medication approaches. He provides CBT-I reviews, clinical sleep studies, and has contributed to research on pain, sleep, obstructive sleep apnea, and quality of life. He also writes the Psychology of Sleep blog on Psychology Today, where he breaks down practical science-based strategies to improve behavioral sleep health and bust the myths that keep people tossing and turning, or at least he oversees that process. Dr. Dubrovsky, welcome to the show. What keeps so many people trapped in insomnia? I've been dealing with insomnia for probably a decade. I live in Manhattan. It's very stressful. I'm sensory overload all the time. It's very hard to fall asleep. It's a city that never sleeps. So insomnia is, I would imagine, very, very prevalent in New York City and even globally, I would imagine. Even when we're utterly exhausted, still can't fall asleep. How does CBTI actually work to break that cycle? And what practical steps can someone start tonight to start sleeping better without relying on medication? Okay, we have a lot to unpack here. I know I'd love to learn more about your background, your education, what got a very young Boris who immigrated to America involved in sleep studies. And it's a very fascinating question, so...
Thank you. You put together a string of questions and they kind of logically connected. I do appreciate your heartwarming introduction and kind of research, my background. And I must admit, I haven't contributed to that Psychology Today blog in a while, but now I'm inspired to write another post, which I'll try to do shortly. But yes, I used to be a music major, and when I came to this country, I was kind of trying to go ahead with that. But that was primarily my mother's choice, who was also a musician at some point. And I always wanted to do something that has to do with trying to understand human condition and the brain and why are we here kind of thing. And with those questions in my very early 20s and kind of in that, in the early 20s, you live a little bit in the fantasy world still, So I went to CUNY Graduate Center. I kind of figured this is the place I could afford to study. And I went to the advising office, and they kind of listened to me for a short while and said, wait a minute, there's this lab up at City College that studies human brain waves, and, they designed the whole lab to do that. And if you go there, you'll be able to kind of connect with the professor and see if this is something you really want to do.
This was the late 90s, right?
It was kind of early mid-90s. When did I start at City College? I think it was 1993. I came here in 1991, and of course it was like a culture shock and all of that, and I was like walking back and forth with my cello, trying to find some gigs and, orient myself, and trying this and trying that, and get some menial jobs. I worked in the bakery for a while, just kind of,
That's a big shift.
From
music and contract work, freelancing, as an artist, to diving into sleep medicine, sleep therapy.
Right.
Was it just circumstantial, or you found something that connected with you on a personal level? Or
sleep was not, I did not think about sleep as much as I thought about kind of figuring out the brain a little bit. And studying, like I was reading Freud and Carlos Castaneda, like in parallel, right, if you remember that guy. So I was like, okay, I want to study psychology, but I also want to study like biological basis of behavior, emotion, that sort of thing. And as I said, at CUNY Graduate Center, it was advising, sort of central advising office. They told me there's this lab, and if you get into City College, you'll be able to kind of explore and hopefully connect with the professor who runs the lab. And that's kind of exactly what I did. And I didn't know what I was going to find there, but I knew it was going to be something interesting. And luckily for me, Dr. Spielman was there and kind of running his sleep center, research sleep center, with a bunch of graduate students who were doing all sorts of things, from lucid dreaming research to like sleep patterns and sleepiness in ADHD children, everything in between, and REM deprivation studies. And I took one class with him. I registered. I was able to kind of like, I had enough training from St. Petersburg Conservatory. They kind of put me as a transfer student, right? And I was fascinated with his personality too. He's a very charismatic person he was, right? And very interested in sleep, and also very willing to listen to students and kind of listen to their interests and their ideas, and kind of incorporate people who would be willing to contribute to the sleep lab that he was running. So I was just kind of at the right place at the right time. And that's how I got fascinated with sleep, partly because of his personal influence. And partly because it was that place where you get together with other people to talk about the brain, to see the brain functioning. And it was just like I was in a dream world. Yeah.
You were following your dreams. Do you find that connection between creating a shift in a person's brainwaves through your music? Do you ever think about that? How you're affecting people on a neural level?
I don't perform really anymore. I did used to perform, and I played gigs, and played some chamber music, but at that point, I did not think about that. Now I think more about it.
I appreciate that.
Yes, how art and music in particular and frequencies may affect our function.
I got very interested in binaural beats, and it's really fascinating. The two different frequencies in each ear, and the brain creates the difference between the oscillating vibrations. It creates a third
Right, like harmonic.
Vibration in the brain, which activates different brain wavelengths that promote either relaxation or concentration or whatever it might be, and so with music, I feel like that is a very real effect and could contribute to people's brain health and help people sleep. I turn on 432 hertz when I go to sleep. Helps me kind of, even out and keep the noise out. And do you practice with different tones, or what do you use in your therapy?
Well, in my clinical work, I go relatively. I align myself, I would say, about 80% with cognitive behavioral therapy standards for insomnia. And CBTI has a very specific set of tools. Some of them were developed by my mentor, Dr. Spielman. There were other major kind of builders, Dr. Bootson, Richard Bootson, who also passed away some years ago, probably published the first paper on the pretty strict behaviorist approach to sleep.
What is that? Just creating the behavioral patterns, habits that help you induce sleep?
Very simple.
Like going to sleep early, exercising, or what goes
Only be in bed if you're about to fall asleep. And if you don't fall asleep, get out of bed. So it's painful, especially if you have already kind of solidified chronic insomnia. But it really breaks you in a very kind of behaviorist way. It breaks your brain out of that dysfunctional association between being in bed and being stressed, restless, frustrated, anxious, all of the above, right? If you only allow yourself to be in bed, if you fall asleep reasonably quickly and actually sleeping, it creates a very quick effect, but doing it alone is very difficult for people. Yeah. So they need a lot of you gotta do it, kind of
kind of forcing myself to embrace the sleeping urge and kind of drop everything I'm doing, and that's the hard part. I'm kind of jealous of the military personnel. Like during combat, they would just fall asleep any 5 seconds they get. I've seen so many videos of in a helicopter, all geared up, just take 5 minutes to get some Z's. So I almost think that we have too much energy, too much ATP at the end of the day that keep us wired and keep the thoughts, and our brain just hasn't digested or burnt up enough fuel for us to kind of get into that sleep state. Maybe not enough movements. Do you think that could be a contributing factor?
Well, movement is a contributing factor, and we do need to burn some ATP, but we do a lot of it with our brain as well. And the brain is, Dr. Spielman actually said that the brain is quite a muscle. It's like a huge amount of your glucose consumption goes to generating ATP for brain cells.
Thinking burns a lot of calories, yeah.
Yeah. It's not just thinking, just like having the brain burns a lot of calories, that sodium potassium pumps. Why are we so wired up at night? Right. If I may connect it to the circadian rhythm component, I think there's a very direct connection there, because feeling worried at night, yes, I can talk about default mode network, cortical network that has to do with this kind of rumination, daydreaming, problem solving when you're not trying to solve the problem, right? Things just kind of spontaneously come up in your brain when you're not trying to focus on anything. And what are you doing at night? You try not to focus. You try to kind of shut it down. And suddenly this whole thing just pops up, right? So that's a pretty natural thing for us to do. We can't sit calmly and just think of nothing. You have to be a Zen master to do that, right? But for a normal person like you and I, we would spontaneously start having all these random thoughts. And sometimes they're pleasant, sometimes they're mostly not so much. We worry about, like, did I turn my gas off? Or, like, how am I going to pay my next bill? Or, you know, how's my child going to be doing, you know, with all these things that are going on, right? So you really start kind of, daydreaming may not be quite the right word for it. You start ruminating. That's what you start doing at night. But when there's nothing else that occupies your attention. But for morning larks, that happens 3, 4 in the morning. They can get into bed like 9:30, 10 p.m. It's like I fall asleep immediately. I'm exhausted. I do have all these things on my mind, but it's almost like my brain just shuts them off and everything's fine. Like 5, 6 hours later, I wake up and suddenly my brain is flooded with all the problems that I hear about or anticipate or deal directly with during the day. Right, but that happens on the, like, in the second half of the night. But if you're more of a night owl, right, if evening is the time when you normally would feel more awake, then you take hours to process the stuff that you didn't quite get a chance to process during the day, right? And once you fall asleep, you tend to sleep more continuously, but then waking up in the morning is painful. And there are some kind of mixed types where they have it both ways. That problem pops up in the beginning of the night, and then a couple of hours later they wake up and have the same thing. So, but it's important to make that distinction that our default mode network, that ruminative brain, or, you know, problem solving without trying to solve kind of brain, pops up at a time when physiologically we may be more attuned to being awake, right? And then at some point it becomes a habit. And that's when a guy like me would come in and say, wait a minute, how can we modify that habit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, at what point will it be considered a disorder?
Right, there are some standards, and if, like, less than 3 months is considered acute insomnia, but if it lasts more than 3 months, it's, you know, already qualifies for chronic insomnia. It also depends, like, how often it occurs, like how long do you actually stay awake, are you able to get back to sleep? So there are kind of, you know, severity gradations, but essentially it's about 3 months.
I guess for the people listening, at what point do they seek professional help?
Excellent question. If you don't mentally assign sort of all your daytime problems, or at least, you know, a significant portion of them, to how you sleep at night, and you just say, okay, I have this problem, it's stressing me out, and I know what's stressing me out as soon as I'm done with my term paper, as soon as I finish that project, as soon as I finally get through that interview and get the job, or kind of, you know, get used to the job, as soon as my child gets into college, I know I'm going to start sleeping better. I know what's stressing me out, and I know as soon as I remove that rock from my road, I will feel better. I'll take a few days off, and I'll get back to my normal routine. You're not worrying about your sleep. You know that your sleep is affected by something else, like in the external world, and you have some control over it. You have a plan. You're not blaming your sleep, right? But as soon as you catch yourself, like, my life is sort of okay, you know, but what I'm worrying about is my sleep. That's when people need to talk to a professional.
Yeah.
Right? It's that vicious cycle of worrying about sleep that keeps you up at night.
And it kind of spirals, right? So, it gradually becomes worse and worse, and that will not sleep or not get enough sleep and then be tired all of the next day. And that kind of pushes back what time we feel tired the next day, right?
Yes.
So, for me, I have like a 15 minute window at like between 10 and 11 p.m., 11:30, something like this, where I just start feeling very, very sleepy. And if I miss that window, it's not until 3 a.m. that I get sleepy again. So, if I keep pushing that back, it might be that I'll get tired at 5 a.m. and then I'll just be destroyed the next day and the day after. So there's a spiraling, effect to that. And I keep telling myself, I'll get my sleep when I leave New York City. I'll move out and everything will go back to place. But you're saying don't wait until that circumstance. Why? Why should we not wait until?
Well, there's some circumstances we kind of have to wait for. As I say, there's some specific life events. It's almost like I'm going to write my sleep and kind of my life off until this happens, as long as it's relatively short term. But if you have a job that's like habitually stressful and it's overwhelming you, you cannot live like that for too long. Either you adapt your attitude, which is something you can do with cognitive therapy, probably not with me, right? But with some other people who help, clients adjust their expectations, perceptions, and so forth. That's possible. Or you change your lifestyle in a way that's more compatible with your ability to.
I have so much to explore, so many different topics, but I kind of just want to, extinguish or, cover a few, talk
please.
about this a little bit more. What are some real life or some practical behavioral changes that people can make that would improve their sleep?
Right.
Simple things that we could start.
Yeah. Sleep, I like, and I sometimes say it to my clients, it's a bit of a metaphor, but I think it helps appreciate the dynamics between you and sleep as a function. Sleep is like a good friend, and you need that friendship, but your friend also has its own quirks, its own patterns, and you have to learn to appreciate that. Say if you're a night owl, you may need one set of tools. If you're morning lark, you may need similar, but you may apply similar set of tools slightly differently, or you kind of modify your tools. Right, but the kind of couple of top-level pieces of advice from behavioral sleep field that have been very well supported. Having a consistent sleep schedule, and I know people probably think you can read it everywhere. Sleep is a 24-hour kind of cycle, sleep, wake, and every cell, every living organism down to like simple cells on this earth, we live in the environment of that 24-hour periodicity, light, dark, cold, warm, right, and also availability of moisture, right, when it gets moist, when it gets drier. Okay, and these are like basic properties of life. Think about photosynthesis, think about chemical reactions go faster when it's warmer, generally speaking. So all of that has been ingrained in every cell of your body. So if you think that you can like party until 4 a.m. one day and a day or two later try to be up at 6 and go to work, that's just not going to happen. I used to do night shifts myself. I worked as a night tech in the sleep lab for a number of years, and you can kind of push your body through it. You can sort of pretend you're okay the next day and go to school and kind of function, but there's a payback.
You can't do that consistently, no.
You cannot do that
because you're running on adrenaline at some point.
You're running on adrenaline. You're really pushing your body into all sorts of untoward things. And people Until recently, I think people started to appreciate more because there's more public media messages about circadian regulation. People just like, I need my 8 hours, and that's what I'm trying to go for. If I am in bed at 4 in the morning, I'm going to put my alarm for noon. If I'm in bed at 9 p.m., I'm going to try to get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and do my morning yoga or something. But you can't change it back and forth. It's like same as traveling to Europe or Asia and coming back 2 days later, right? It's just your body cannot work like that. It's not designed for that type of shift. Some people are more flexible than others and can adapt easier. Younger people have that greater degree of flexibility. But right, when I start pushing my early mid-40s, like I cannot do night shifts anymore. Once in a blue moon if I must, but it's just like I can't. Some people stay longer. There are night nurses. There are people who really do it until they retire. And I see some of them in my office, and they struggle to reestablish more normal routine. It becomes ingrained, that kind of fragmented sleep. Shift workers do not get full 7-8 hours, no matter what they do, kind of.
And I'm curious about the negative implications about not getting enough sleep. I understand that there's cell death, psychosis, even some correlations to diabetes and other, chronic heart disease and
things.
Stress. What happens when we sleep, and how is that connected to the negative implications from not sleeping?
Yes.
Why is sleep so important to us?
As an insomnia specialist, I'm a little bit afraid, and actually one of my blogs, I kind of spoke about that.
Don't be afraid. This is
I'm afraid to emphasize negative consequences. Let me give you a little bit of a bigger picture. There was a time back in maybe 70s, 80s, when people were promoting sleeping less and training how to sleep less, telling how there were different methods, like if you curtail your sleep little by little, you can squeeze it down to 5 hours, or if you sleep these 1 hour naps at
I hear during that time cocaine was very popular.
That would make sense, right, but it's not sustainable. Yeah, thank you for the contribution. Right? And then there were some major figures in the sleep field who really pushed back. Dr. Charles Czeisler was certainly, one of the leading people in that domain, kind of pushing back, what are we doing to ourselves? And if you look at the kind of current state of affairs with sleep, statistically, there are many more people who kind of purposefully sleep deprive themselves, or just don't think it's important enough, or it's kind of important, but I have other things to do. Let me just borrow from sleep, right. That would be approximately 40% of adult population in the United States, whereas chronic insomnia, less percentage-wise, about 10 to 15% we estimate. So when those public messages about sleep became really, really loud, in early 2000s, mid-2000s, it was all about why are we sleep depriving ourselves? We're causing accidents, we're killing ourselves, we don't interact well, we do all sorts of, we're not productive at work. It doesn't mean that if you're physically there, you're doing anything productive. It just, companies start to kind of listen to that more. Maybe.
So companies like Google and Apple set up sleep stations.
Yeah. They kind of start listening to that. Sleep is important. But the backside of it, for specialists in insomnia, you start getting an upsurge of people who are so scared of not sleeping that they can't sleep. Sleep is not something that you can do when you're scared.
Mm-hmm.
And do you mind if I connect in a very interesting way to your earlier comment about, military personnel?
Please.
They supposed to be scared all the time, but they become almost they accept that inevitability, I might be killed at any moment. And I really have to, like, if I have that, 20 minutes to sleep, I'm going to take it. Because that might be the thing that prevents me from getting killed in the next hour, because I'm more sharp, my reflexes are a little better, right? And people almost develop this uncanny ability to just turn sleep on and off. I was in the Soviet army. I was never not even close to anything like combat, but it's almost like, you learn that ability. We weren't even trained at Navy SEAL breathing, or we were just this is your schedule, right?
That's
now is your sleep time, and 6 a.m. you're out of bed, and 45 minutes you were dressed and running, and you get trained like a rat, unfortunately, but your body kind of
like a soldier.
Like a soldier, and your body responds to that, and it's almost like you fall asleep on a drop of a dime, and you're out.
Yeah.
You get trained. Behavioral sleep approach to sleep is a little bit like that. And that rubs people the wrong way conceptually, but people who are able to really embrace it and say, I'm going to train my body like I'm in a boot camp, they get better. For other people who have to do softer routes.
Is it mostly a physical kind of practical approach to therapy, or is there more also kind of a talk therapy through that process you combine?
Yes. It's very physical. If I could control, and I think I've heard some other sleep specialists saying that if I could control 100% of the environment of my patients, I probably could cure most of them. I'm not, again, I can't say 100%, but I would be able to cure most of them fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But people would not submit to that. I have to convince a person to do the right thing for themselves.
When someone comes to your clinic, what are some evaluation tools that you use to determine? And do you place people into different categories of what's causing their insomnia so that you can kind of diagnose and treat that? Or how does that process work?
I place people's behaviors in 3 different categories. I try not to categorize individuals, right? But the behaviors I kind of classify into 3 things.
Yeah.
One,
The insomnia does not define anyone, right?
Right. That's exactly right. Because people...
It's the behavior.
Yes. I would compare it with any physiological or kind of psychological issue that people, any person, we all have some weaknesses and, things we grapple with. And what starts to happen, it's almost like talking about consciousness, right? We are fairly aware and in decent, more or less, we're in okay control when it comes to functions that we are good with, right? But when it comes to functions that we are not so good with, person who has difficulty with difficult relationship with food, right? Person who has difficult relationship with exercise, person who has difficult relationship with, some certain focus. How do I organize myself with time wise, they start creating this kind of patterns of dysfunction and covering up and not being aware, and the same thing happens with insomnia. People create these sort of rituals that seem logical to them, but to any behavioral sleep specialist do not seem logical, right? And you kind of look at me like...
Well, you started... So I started thinking that... Could it be that people are addicted almost to the sense of sleep deprivation? What you're saying is very interesting.
In
and it made me
clinical
start to think
psychology,
maybe that
yes, it's probably, I'm not sure, right?
That little kind of drowsy effect, like you
Yeah.
took some downers, like you
I'm
had
not
a few
sure people
beers.
are addicted to that.
Do you think that maybe possibly people find that feeling kind of...
Right.
comfortable.
Sometimes people with chronic insomnia tend to not like all the adjective about like preparing for sleep or like having to prepare for sleep, and that daytime feeling of being dragged, like kind of dragging your
I hate
feet.
the withdrawal.
Yeah.
But the high is amazing.
Right.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about. There's a lot I'd like to talk about, but we have a time. Let me just think for a second. Should we jump to astral? Are you familiar with kind of astral projection and
Astral?
astral projection? Like when people are asleep, their consciousness, floats.
I'm
Are you familiar
happy
with
to
this
talk
concept?
about that stuff as a complete lay person.
Yeah.
It's way outside
Do you
of
have
my...
any experience, any clinical experience with this?
Not as a clinical provider, no. And if I meet a person who brings that experience, I probably would recommend them to see someone else or a psychologist. Yeah. Because I would not be addressing that. As a layperson,
I'm not sure it's a disorder. I think it's more of a hobby or activity that people, like to do, like vivid dreaming. The people, kind of create an atmosphere for themselves where they could get into, vivid dreaming, and it's just fun for people. So I don't think they consider themselves, with a disorder. But
no. People have practices like meditation, lucid dreaming, and these are like great practices. We're still trying to figure out how the brain does it, what's going on, and I can opine a little bit, right? Especially as far as dreaming and lucid dreaming.
You mentioned the pineal gland just now. Are you want to talk about how that creates dreams, or if that?
Pineal gland secretes melatonin. I know it's been kind of dubbed as the third eye, and
the DMT.
Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. That's a little bit outside of my expertise and comfort zone. Right. It starts to bridge with realms that, in my private life, I don't necessarily think always like a scientist, but in my professional code, I do look at evidence, and even if I do like kind of soft evidence, sort of clinical wisdom type, anecdotal evidence, there's still some sort of like grounding in, say, okay, the brain is the organ of the mind, and we're doing behavior to train our bodies and all of that. In my clinical code, I do not speculate about astral projections, and I'm sorry. Yeah.
Going back to insomnia, so what advice could you give someone to kind of strengthen their sleep habits?
Yes. So those three dimensions by which I organize it, in my mind at least, symptoms and behaviors that people share with me. One is the circadian rhythm dimension, and I'm using one. It's the order is completely arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
All three of them are important. So circadian rhythm, are you kind of very roughly more of a night owl, more morning lark? Are you in between? Are you relatively flexible with timing, or is it all over the place? Okay, all right. And
all over the place is a problem, right?
It's a bigger problem that are harder to solve. I would rather see it's easier to help a clear night owl or a clear morning lark, but sometimes people start as night owls and then they kind of end up as they kind of mature.
And that has to do with a person's hormones. It has to do, and I would imagine would change as they get older. I've heard older people tend to become more night owls? Is that
More morning
more
larks. Morning larks, yeah. The lifespan development in the circadian rhythm kind of domain, when you're young child, really mostly early, right, falling asleep like 7, 8 p.m., waking up like 6 a.m., sometimes earlier, right? So that's a more typical pattern. But what determines your chronotype is the technical term, is that suprachiasmatic nucleus that sits, it's part of the hypothalamus that has to do with all sorts of homeostatic regulation processes, and it gets direct input from the retina from cells that were discovered at, like, forget the exact year, somewhere mid-2000s. It was a huge deal. Nobody thought there would be anything else new to discover in the retina, and suddenly it was a completely different type of cells that feed into the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's the structure that determines your body rhythm. It's very genetic, and they've done like really fascinating studies back in the 90s and 2000s and mid 2010s, right? Dr. Michael Young won Nobel Prize for doing circadian rhythm research, and it goes back to like they studied fruit flies and humans and like making connections. It's a kind of fascinating piece of science, but we all have that ticking clock inside us. And for some people it runs a little bit later, for some people it runs a little bit earlier, but when we become adolescents, most people start to run substantially later. I would venture kind of almost layperson's type of guess that it has to do with procreation, right? When you stay up late to kind of meet a mate and many people grow out of that by mid-20s or so, but there's a substantial portion of people who stay in that night owl place. And I used to be kind of leaning towards night owl, and I could push it back, and I was like, okay, I need this, I need to wake up at the same time and not miss school. And if you motivate it, there was no night owls in the Soviet army. There's like a whole bunch of young individuals drafted, right? There were no chronotypes. Everybody lived like 10 p.m. you're in bed, 6 a.m. you're up, and that's all there is to it. And your brain clock learns. Because what are you doing at 6 a.m.? You go outside and you run. Rain or shine or snow or sleet, whatever, you're running outside. I guarantee if you start doing this, your sleep will start coming pretty regularly.
Only if there's someone outside with a whistle and kicking my bed and, dragging me out
That's
every
exactly
morning.
Right.
Like in the army.
Yeah.
There's also the scientists who spend, time months underground caves where it's pitch black and, they turn their 24-hour cycle into a 36-hour cycle. Sunlight does have a huge role in creating that circadian rhythm.
Circadian rhythms fall apart after a while. Most people first start running on approximately like close to 25-hour cycle, but at that point our multiple rhythms, our hormonal rhythms, melatonin rhythm, body temperature, they still locked pretty much. There is some shifting that takes place, but overall your body is still functioning as one unit. But if you do that kind of bunker study or like time deprivation study long enough, like after a couple of weeks, your sleep starts to run on a 36-hour cycle. Your body temperature is still running on like close to 25-hour cycle. And you start feeling like crap no matter what until your body temperature and your sleep kind of catch up, and then they get desynchronized again. It's called desynchronized free run. That's the official term. And it's almost like you're constantly in that jet lag state. You don't know you sleep like, 25, 26 hours. You may not even, because you don't see the clock. But you wake up after this really long bout of sleep and you still feel clammy. You can't sleep anymore, but you still feel like because it's like different. It's like having a car where one wheel runs at like 60 miles an hour, another wheel like 100 miles an hour, and another wheel at like 40 miles an hour. And the fourth wheel is just like not doing anything. Can you imagine driving like that? Right. That's how your body starts to feel.
I think of that kind of as a vitamin deficiency maybe, or a chemical imbalance. Would that be accurate?
Know about vitamin
Or it could be
deficiency.
maybe other things that are causing it.
It can cause all sorts of imbalances, hormonal
No,
imbalances.
I mean the chemical imbalance causes the shift in,
That's been
or maybe vice versa.
That's being researched. There's a lot of connection between chronotype and kind of mental conditions. There's a pretty strong link to being a night owl with all sorts of kind of mental disorders.
Yeah.
As a sleep specialist, if you go to school as a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist, it's almost like, yeah, sleep is the rear end of that process, like tail end. As a sleep specialist, I can tell you a story that feels pretty compelling to me, right? And I don't see particularly great evidence against that story, right? That people who are by nature night owls, and they're very strong night owls, who can be identified. My daughter was one of them, since my younger daughter, since young age, clearly a night owl. And I was training her, you gotta have that morning sunlight. And she even told her teacher once, my suprachiasmatic nucleus malfunctioned. She must have been in third grade, right? I was teaching her, you can't let your body, really run with it, because there will be some consequences later on in life. But what happens around teenage years, when there's a substantial percentage of young people, 15 to 20%, who develop very strong night owl kind of biology. And they try, many of them try, not all of them stay watching funny cat videos or, smoking pot or whatever, No, many of them really try to adhere to the demands of society, their parents, their mental health providers. So you got to be in bed at 10 p.m. because, but their body's just not there to perform the job, and they start getting anxious. They start feeling they blame themselves, they blame their poor skills, they're like, what's wrong with me? And that can be a pathway that somebody can end with anxiety, depression, all sorts of untoward things.
Self-deprecating cycle.
Yeah.
So you said there were three things. The first is circadian rhythm. We could jump back to the second and third. And then I wanted to see if you could talk briefly about what to avoid to help better sleep, because you just mentioned
that's one of those things.
Okay,
those
cool.
three things.
We can jump back to it.
Thank you. Konstantin, we both get excited and we kind of thank you for bringing me
No,
back.
I know.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I love the tangents, and I'm trying to weave everything together and
thank you.
make a quilt of thoughts and ideas.
Appreciate that. So circadian rhythmicity is one big aspect. Another aspect is what they talk about in the sleep field as homeostatic sleep drive. How active you are during the day. Do you lie down, take naps, or rests? Even rest, people say, oh, but I don't sleep. I just rest because I feel exhausted. Even if you just kind of allow yourself to be in that kind of sluggish state. If you do it at a scheduled time for a short period, like in the early afternoon somewhere, that's okay. But if you start doing this multiple times a day, whenever that okay, let me just do this for a little bit. I don't really sleep, and and it almost becomes like a frustrating experience that you feel exhausted. You try to sleep, but then you can't, and it just builds that frustration about my sleep is just not there for me when I need it, right?
I get worried about not being able to fall asleep.
Right, but it's almost like trying too hard throughout the day and at night, and it's just it reduces what we call homeostatic sleep drive. For homeostatic sleep drive...
Is it kind of like we build a tolerance? To
that drowsy yet wired kind of state?
Yeah.
It almost becomes, our mode of functioning in some way.
We're kind of on that verge of falling asleep, but we resist it, and then it becomes...
Right. That's a very interesting thought. that brings our cognition and our emotional reactions into focus. If you judging yourself as you go, whether you're taking a math test, whether you're performing music on stage or recording a video, right? If you're judging yourself as you go, you're not going to do too well. That anxiety and self-judgment is going to get in the way. So one of the aspects of kind of chronic insomnia is that constant, like, where's my sleep? How's my sleep doing? Like, it's not happening again, right? And it can't happen if you're constantly in that self-observing and self-judging state, right? But what you can do instead during the day is really trying to get engaged physically to the extent that, your body allows. Push yourself a little bit. Try to mentally, okay, let me kind of stay focused. Or like get up and distract myself with a little bit of, get a little bit of sunlight, or rechannel my attention if I can, and then come back to this task. So kind of keeping yourself going and saving that sleep drive. Sleep drive, it sounds like, a little bit of shamanic term. It's like, what's sleep drive? But it has very specific physiological meaning, right? It has to do, with breaking down of ATP, accumulating free adenosine. It's a complex chemical process, but as we break down ATP, sooner or later we accumulate that free adenosine. Some of it is released by glial cells when they start running out of glycogen that's, they release when we kind of start getting short on glucose, the neurons need, right? So there's a lot of metabolic parts that go into it, but we do accumulate throughout the day that free-floating adenosine that starts to act as a neurotransmitter, essentially. And it does two things. It disinhibits, it activates part of the hypothalamus that puts everything else to sleep. Like this, the sleep guard, if you will. So that sleep guard, ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, if you want to be very technical, it gets disinhibited by free adenosine, okay? But your cortex gets inhibited by free adenosine. And if you resist that, you'll find yourself in this kind of like semi-zombie state when people are like, okay, let me try to finish this. Let me, oh my God, the task that takes me 15 minutes when I'm awake.
Your fine motor cortex is just not, in sync.
That's right.
And then I guess you could have the opposite effect, right? Not to cut you off or interrupt or anything, but you could be lying there awake, not doing anything, but just not being able to fall asleep.
Right. So that's
kind of the opposite.
Default mode network. If you have worries that are emotionally kind of gnawing at you, they will definitely pop up if everything is calm and quiet, right? So you got to give that. That brings us to the third dimension. So homeostatic sleep drive is like making sure you're stay awake and active throughout the day. And it also making sure that you don't hurt your sleep drive with things like caffeine. It's like the most common anti-sleep drive substance.
What time is too late to drink caffeine? Depends on the person.
Depends on the person and the metabolism, and a couple of things about that, right? Physiologically, if you want caffeine pretty much out of your system, it would take you about 12 hours. The half-life is like somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 hours, depending how metabolism, how good your metabolism is. But, so if you have a cup of coffee at, 5 p.m., it's like, oh, okay, right. By about 11 p.m., about half of that caffeine is still in your system, and you may be sufficiently tired that you overcome that effect. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, okay? But if there's enough adenosine and you're a young person and you were active and you did all these other wonderful things during the day, you will feel tired enough and you fall asleep, but there will be measurable reductions in the sleep quality, like more we call them arousals, like 3-5 second very brief wake patterns during your sleep.
And that affects REM.
That,
And
REM, it can affect
dreaming and-
REM, it can affect your deep sleep, right? So you will be getting somewhat compromised sleep even if you're not consciously awake. And it's like, oh, I think I was sleeping for like 8 hours or more, but I'm still kind of tired. Yeah.
The microbursts are kind of more subconscious, and you only feel the effects on a macro scale, not the
Right. You will not
individual-
notice those brief awakenings, but
So even if you don't feel anything, you're still being affected,
yeah.
which is a silent killer in itself.
Yeah. In older individuals like myself, right, when metabolism starts to slow down, that ventrolateral preoptic nucleus starts to lose its cells. I mean, I'm a little young for that, but you kind of start looking down the pipe, right? As you get older, your sleep guard in the hypothalamus starts losing its cells, and that doesn't provide as strong of a sleep-promoting input at night. So yeah, that's kind of a problem. So the same cup of coffee at 5 p.m. may be kind of a minor nuisance for a 20-year-old, or barely noticeable, not noticeable at all, right? Whereas for like a 50-year-old, it's going to be a big problem, right? Or 58-year-old. So, right, things that can undermine your homeostatic sleep drive, right? Caffeine is alcohol. Interestingly, although it's kind of sedating, but it also works against deep sleep, right? Again, I don't want to get into like biochemistry and like more of it, but yes, your cortex, although it sedates your brainstem, so you become like less aroused, it doesn't allow your cortex, with sufficiently high amounts of alcohol, doesn't allow your cortex to go into really deep sleep, delta sleep, like that really restorative sleep. Alcohol is not a...
Yeah, alcohol is a bad one. Your therapy practices, your clinic, your treatment focuses on a medication-free therapy. For the most part, right? I mean, of course, there's medications.
Right.
Yeah. So, the alcohol that sedates the brain, is that comparable to kind of Ambien and other kind of sleep medications?
In some ways.
Is that why you avoid the medications, because they
I
don't give you a quality of sleep? It's more of a Band-Aid than a treatment.
I would call it a training wheel.
I guess my question is, why do you focus on medication-free therapy?
There are no medications that are recommended for long-term use for sleep. People use medications, sometimes off-label. It's a little bit, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't prescribe. I help people kind of reduce the use of medicine. And in the process of reduction, even if you go
It's because the medicine doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually help, right?
It does work. You need medicine, you take medicine. It's like...
I mean downers. I mean sleep medicine.
It's not a judgment of character. It's not sometimes we need medicine.
Okay.
I had severe back pain. I took pain medicine. Personally, it's not my philosophy to take medicine. I could not function. I had to use crutches. I came to work and I would take pain medicine. I mean, I need to get through the day somehow.
That's
right?
Fair.
Yeah. But behavioral routines are considered top of the line what fix your
insomnia.
And the word fix again is like, if you have multiple herniated discs, you may still have flare-ups and so forth, but you can get to a functional point with no painkillers, right? So that's kind of same approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
What other things should we avoid?
What should we avoid?
Caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, nicotine.
Probably
shouldn't be smoking cigarettes before going to sleep.
Right.
Should avoid pornography. I've heard a lot of people say that pornography before it actually helps people fall asleep, but is there truth to that?
Sexual release helps us feel kind of satiated and fall asleep, and some people really kind of get used to that, and
Is that more of a crutch? Is there any evidence to support that?
look, if as long as it doesn't take some kind of weird morbid forms, it's a kind of very tricky personal area. I've heard that from clients, like after sex, it's just or sometimes people say like, I used to fall asleep easily after sex, and now like I can't. What's wrong with me, right? So
It's the stress.
people do notice that. If you stay within kind of realm of your sort of standard behaviors and it helps you, why not, right? If you really have to like go through the hoops to get that fixed, then probably there are better options. Okay. Yeah.
What else should we avoid?
What should we avoid? So I did mention that third dimension. And third dimension is really the opposite of sleep, right? One of the founding findings in sleep research, in the history of sleep research, was the discovery of ascending reticular activating system. That's kind of Marutz and Magoon, right?
So you should avoid sunlight.
You should avoid things that will activate your ascending reticular activating system. And people... My phone relaxes me.
Blue light.
I get into bed and I get relaxed by doing this. No, you don't. You know what happens? That default mode network that wants to scream, your bills are not paid, your spouse is not happy with you, your children are like failing at school, or, all of these things, and the world is going to pieces, right?
Yeah.
And you distract yourself, and you feel distracted. And that's what makes you feel as if you're relaxed. Your ascending reticular activating system thinks otherwise. You're stimulated.
Do you ever think about how the vibrations of light waves affect our brainwave production? Or I guess, is there any truth to that? Is it that the frequency of the light activates or stimulates, our thinking? Is there a frequency of light? Like I was mentioning before, the sound waves, right?
What we do know is that, and it's very well documented, that blue part of the spectrum, like close to the blue light, it suppresses your melatonin.
Okay. So
it does have this more potent effect on your brain in terms of the brain starts thinking that you're awake. Okay, and
is it because the sunlight is blue, right? So it's the same.
Well, it's not blue exactly. It's like full spectrum light. I guess like if you look at the open sky, you get that blue effect. But it's really
once it goes through our atmosphere,
it gets
it bounces around a little bit.
It does.
Blues and purples, but
I think there's like not just blue. This is more slanted towards blue. People do pay attention to that, and nowadays these devices, I can set it up and it'll turn.
I love your screensaver.
Oh, that's my daughter making a ridiculous face just to do
funny.
what teenage daughters do to their fathers, piss them off. Right?
No, it's good.
Blue, all the screens nowadays have an option to make a, blue filter.
Does that work?
It works.
How effective is it?
It works, and it can be effective, but there's another component that blue light filters do not scratch at all. What kind of content you are consuming. If you are reading Tolstoy War and Peace on this device with blue light filter on, you're probably okay. Even if you do, and I tell my clients, look, I'm not very hard behaviorist. And if you read for 15, 20 minutes, even if it's like Kindle or your device, as long as you don't start watching videos, moving images, as long as you don't start getting engaged with social media posts, content makes a big difference.
Is it specifically War and Peace because it just puts you to sleep? Or is it reading any kind of book because it activates a certain region of the brain that helps us burn more ATP that will make us more drowsy?
No.
Or,
It's not
or
that
something like
physiological. I think it's more psychological. And I mentioned
It
War
puts
and
us in a
Peace.
state of mind that's more kind of susceptible to falling asleep.
Right. Content is also very individual. I used War and Peace because Tolstoy, until recently, and I am ashamed to say as a Russian grown reader, I was always like, if I start reading Dostoevsky, I will stay up all night. If I read Tolstoy, even now, with all my newly found appreciation, I finished War and Peace over COVID because there was not much else to do. Right. I was like, I
All
gotta
600
finally
pages.
do it. Yeah. It puts me to sleep. He's like this long-winded narrative and detailed descriptions. They put me to sleep. I know English majors, who's, like I mentioned, War and Peace, like, no, I will be up all night reading that stuff. Tell me something else.
Yeah.
You know, content, it has to be kind of winding down and diverting your attention into things. People who are religious, I ask them, engage with your spiritual type of reading and material. Get the type of content that takes you away from our everyday reality, away from your kind of day-to-day worries and concerns.
Fascinating. I thought that maybe the tone in which it's written somehow would activate, certain regions or waves that.
Right.
Some delta waves.
I don't know about that, but it can certainly, I think it has more to do with modifying our emotional states. Certain content is more compatible to our kind of calmness with our, and
puts us more at peace into a comfort zone, something.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Sorry.
So we should read half an hour before going to sleep. That helps. What other things should we embrace or practice?
I think it's a very big one, and it comes directly from the behavioral sleep textbook. Use the bed for sleep. I mean, sex, right? Sex is allowed, right? But the bed is really the place where you're going to sleep. And if reading for a short period of time, plain text, non-stimulating, is part of your ritual, that's okay. But ideally, I've done all sorts of things that I considered bad for sleep in the standard sleep kind of therapist textbook. I work night shifts. I try to sleep with severe pain and not being able to. Right. I've stayed up working on a computer late at night. One thing I've never done, once in a very blue moon, like I never say never, right? I would go to sleep drunk sometimes because, again, growing up in drinking culture, it's okay, you get drunk,
You don't think about it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
you don't worry about it. It's fine, everybody's doing it, right?
You never thought at that time you would become an insomnia specialist.
Yeah. So I've done all these other bad things, but one thing I've never done, I don't use my bed as a couch. Never. I just for some reason, and I think it goes back to my mother, and she trained me that way. You go to bed to sleep, and I don't know where she got it from, but
no, that's very interesting. You have a space specifically for utility. It's a.
That's right.
It's for utility. So your brain associates a certain movement or action, or body posture, with a certain, anticipation.
Physiological, yes, absolutely.
So as soon as you lie down, it's almost like your brain is anticipating sleep and helps you to get there.
That's right. I don't have a question or what's going to happen. I know.
So your approach to sleep, your behavioral approach to sleep, specifically, the habit, it's the same habit, skill. It's the same skill of forming a habit. I don't know how to phrase it.
Yes.
As anything else, as you would to quit smoking, or you just reprogram your brain to associate certain actions with outcomes and expectations.
That's right.
So on and
And
so
break out of those associations that
Negative
trigger
cycles.
craving. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So, cool. So, we'll slowly start. I bet if anyone is listening to this, they would most definitely have fallen asleep by now. So, mission accomplished.
That's my goal.
Creating content to improve people's lives is what I'm here for. So, if that means helping them fall asleep, then that goes with the theme of this episode. Yeah. So I took a semester at Hunter College, neuroscience. You were my professor, and it was probably one of the best class experiences I've had. I graduated from Hunter in 2013. I took 5 years to bachelor's psychology and film. And I was I was very much involved in the WhatsApp group for our class and kind of just helping everyone and organizing study sessions and everything and communicating with the class. And one of the things that universally, or I guess the class kind of wholeheartedly acknowledged, is they complimented your approach to teaching the neuroscience course at Hunter College. So this is my very blatant recommendation for anyone who's interested in taking a neuroscience course at Hunter College to have you as their professor, because you created an atmosphere that facilitated a learning experience environment without the severe stress of worrying about grades and you were very lenient on the grade aspect, and you were mostly focused on the learning aspect, obtaining the information and retaining the information. And even as you were explaining all the neuroscience terminology, I was reminiscing about everything I learned, and you made learning fun. You made learning fun, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. The class. The class agrees. Here's something. So I wrote into the WhatsApp group earlier today, and I said, "Is there anything you want me to tell him?" And so here are some things from the classmates that I will read to you. Tell him that we are all grateful for all his support throughout the semester. And mind you, right now is almost April. We took this class last semester, so from September to December. So this was 4 months ago. An entirely new semester has already started, and all these people are still so, enthusiastic, reminiscing about your teaching style. Hey, honestly, just hoping all the best for him and appreciate him for being real with us and being supportive. Let's see. And then the rest of it is they just want to see the podcast. So.
Are you trying to make me embarrassed?
No, not embarrassed. No, not at all.
I do appreciate that with all my heart. I get emotionally invested in things that I do. And I do it kind of intentionally and probably partly by nature and partly because I guess I was, at some point I was trained as a performer, and, I think it's important to be that kind of emotionally out there. And
But what's fascinating, I mean, everything you're saying, so many people, relate to, but they don't necessarily, practice as much. And also, for decades, you've maintained this kind of philosophy. So, you haven't lost that energy, which I think is very admirable. So, we
Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank
very
you.
much.
I appreciate you guys. Really, I learn from my students a lot.
And so, as a form of appreciation, our class pulled together some funds, and we decided to present to you a couple of gifts. So I wanted to use this opportunity. Don't mind the Whole Foods bag. But this is for you. And okay, sorry.
Thank you.
So I think I hope you find these useful, or maybe it's a collector's item.
Okay. I do appreciate very much. This is probably not something that should be kind of, done regularly, or
And you know what?
but-
In my entire,
Oh.
in all of my studies, my education, this is the first time I've seen the class come together so enthusiastically. So this is not a regular thing.
Thank you. It's
yeah.
very heartwarming. For
Please,
you and for I'm kind of a little dumbfounded. It's again not something that I
and I
kind
very
of
much wanted to see
expect
your reaction, so we're
or
gonna love
do,
this.
and I do appreciate, and I kind of yes, thank you. With the messages. Okay, all right. I'll just kind of thank you. Hold it very close to my heart. Thank you, guys. This is really, the purchases, I'm grateful for you kind of putting things together in that sense, and I understand where you're coming from. These notes are really the best thing, even in the form of email. It doesn't have to be like a fancy card. It really warms hearts, and I think every teacher feels that way, that if you get some kind of feedback from a student who already finished and done with you, and they come back and say it was a good experience and I learned something that helped me later in life one way or another, or just broaden my horizons. I think that's really the greatest gift any person in that capacity can receive. But yeah, let me take a look at this is, you guys, I probably mentioned that I like chocolate and how chocolate and dopamine and serotonin, right? Yeah, I'm sure.
Dark chocolate, 85% cacao, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I meant to ship this, that's why they're all taped up.
Thank you. Books, yeah, books. Oh, Dostoevsky, right. Yeah, Dostoevsky.
Which one is this?
Notes from the
show the
Dead House.
notes from a Dead House.
Dead House. Yeah.
I really, and when I came across this book, I was like, "Oh, you're gonna love this." This is Dostoevsky's notes after serving time in the Siberian Gulag, where he was on death row. He was.
There were no Gulag yet. Gulag is a Soviet, but it's a Soviet term. But yes, there were similar places.
He was in a Siberian war.
Yeah, it's
the prison camp.
Prison camp, and they made them work, and yeah.
And he was pardoned, I think, by the Tsar. Is that what happened?
He was about to get, I think, hanged, and
just for speaking his mind or something like this, right? For writing a book.
He was part of a kind of a anti-government sort of group. and he was supposed to be executed, and
That's
the
right.
pardon came like literally minutes before the execution took place.
Yeah.
And that features prominently in a number of his books, like how it feels to know that you're about to be executed, how it kind of changes your perception.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah.
And I think this was his memoir that he wrote. So I
Yeah.
thought that maybe, because I know you like those very dark Russian literary. So I think this will be
Thank you. Dostoevsky, speaking of circadian rhythms, Dostoevsky finds light in darkness. That's his gift, to really go as deep as you can and scrape that bottom and like pull some sort of light out of there.
Yeah, I can't imagine being on death row for years and then coming, it's like having a new life.
Right. Well, I'm not sure about years. I don't know how
Listen.
long that whole trial took place. But after pardon, he went to...
Yeah,
to
I thought it was
Siberia.
maybe 3 or 4 years or something like this.
Yeah. I don't
But,
remember like how long.
It has to be
was,
such a crazy experience. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think
Right,
you would really.
Oh, I'm going to need some cutting instrument.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And yeah, right. I was talking about circadian rhythms and how all life on Earth and so forth, but apparently there's some living organisms that evolved, developed, appeared in like darkness of the sea that do not use photosynthesis. They have like some
Chemical
other
synthesis.
Yeah. So
I mean, the Mariana Trench, yeah, that's
Right.
chronotypes.
But I don't think we relate to them as far as
No.
evolution. This does
So-
look like a collector item. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah, that's all. I don't know the different translations, and I know it, but it's
I
sort of
wanted
a
to get you an
foundational
authentic
book.
Russian language collector's item, but because of the war, there's no transportation.
No. I
Everything
I
on
get
Etsy
it.
is like shipped from Ukraine or shipped from Moscow.
Right,
So.
right. And Gogol. May I ask Anastasia
Please.
really dumb question?
Please.
Is Gogol considered in Ukraine kind of like Ukrainian author? Yeah, of course. He came to St. Petersburg and he kind of started writing Petersburg's stories. I forget how, like in English, short stories. But yeah, he's very much Ukrainian author who is the founder, one of the founding fathers of Russian literature. Yeah. And I mean, he contributed to the world literature really, but yeah, he's brought a lot of that Ukrainian folklore with some twists. Yeah.
I'm Russian. I was born in Moscow, but I left at 4 years old. My wife is Ukrainian, and so I kind of am trying to be very careful about what I say publicly about Russian and Ukraine, but
It's
All-
yeah.
all the best things are from Ukraine, I think. Borscht,
Boris, right.
Gogol.
Gogol, definitely.
Some of the
Gogol,
best things
yeah.
are from Ukraine, for sure.
Dostoevsky is indebted to Gogol in many ways, and he kind of like acknowledges it. Even in his novels, he kind of mentions Gogol here and there. Yeah,
And
Thank
they were
you.
all from that same time period. Like all the great Russian
but
they were
Yeah,
friends. A lot of them were
right.
friends.
Gogol met Pushkin, and then right. Dostoevsky was a little bit later.
Do you think? I mean, surely they must have spent countless nights or days or drinking with each other and
That I
talking
don't
stories
know,
and
right, that-
fabricating. you know,
That I don't know.
talking about how miserable life is. And
Yeah. I don't know about
had to have
miserable. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a
Well,
misconception about like
I mean,
the Slavic culture, like
yeah.
you know.
I mean, just from what I know from being Slavic, I find so much comfort in being in despair. You know, like finding that silver lining and that, and all the pain. Is that a common
Right.
thread?
It is a bit of a common thread that the light comes from the impossibility of darkness. I'm going to give you an American quote. I think it's from the All the King's Men, and the name of the author escapes me right now. The quote is that, and I know it in Russian, so I'm going to be back translating it to English. The original is in English. That we must do good from evil because there's nothing else to make it from. And my poor translation, it's Warren.
Robert Penn Warren's All the King's Men.
Yes,
We must do good from evil.
because there's nothing else to make it from. So that she say like Russian, yeah, it's American author,
Yeah.
but American kind of realities came up with the same idea. There's some depth to it.
It's very optimistic. I'd love to do this again and maybe dig deep into sorry, it just slipped my mind. Not insomnia, but
REM sleep, dreaming
yeah,
would be
the
cool.
dreaming aspect, consciousness. Is there any correlation between dreaming, or I guess let's just say dreaming, and intelligence?
Yes.
There is?
Yes, there is. REM sleep, we used to think, maybe I used to think, right? But I think the field used to think that REM sleep is really the prerogative, thank you, of mammals and birds. Now we know more and more about other animals having some kind of analogous states in their sleep. And it does seem to have to do, what is in a nutshell REM sleep? It's the time during which the brain activates itself to simulate reality. In human, I don't know, right, I'm very poor with like animal biology, but in humans, REM sleep, or like they call it active sleep, seems to be the first discernible state of the brain in the fetus. And sorry, pointing to my belly, right? So that's when the brain kind of starts.
That's where the fetus is developed.
Right, not in my belly, right? I had 2 kids.
So fetuses have REM sleep?
They start off with really kind of REM sleep.
That's fascinating.
Newborn babies have about 50% of their sleep allocated to REM, and premature babies, again, they call it active sleep. Nomenclature is a little different, but it's the same type of state. What happens is that the brainstem starts to wake up the cortex, stimulate pathways from the thalamus to the cortex, and all those sensory pathways, and the baby starts moving. As adults, well, older, we developed muscle atonia
within paralysis.
Sleep paralysis develops during the first 3 or so months of life. Newborns don't have sleep paralysis.
That's why they kick?
Babies, that's why they kick in the mother's womb. They say, "Oh, why is he kicking me? I'm trying to sleep at night." They probably,
So are
or
they.
she, right? Sorry, they having REM sleep,
Fascinating.
and they moving, and that movement and the sensations that come with it and the self-activation contributes to the development of the brain, building those pathways. And when the baby sort of
So the skeletal muscles.
skeletal muscles, tactile sensations, all sorts of, visual, kind of visual motor, some degree of...
Cerebellum automatic reflexes.
That I don't know, but maybe there's so much stuff I don't know,
all
right?
Of it gets formed from nothing, from a single cell.
Right.
It has to form those connections, right?
So it's almost like that self-activation is building and building and building those connections that are pre-programmed. And then once the new brain comes out of the womb and starts to get sensory experiences, they have to be incorporated somehow. And sleep is the perfect time. There are different stages of memory consolidation. People, there's a lot of research about that, how we consolidate our daily experiences during sleep. Right? And there are kind of stages to that. So it looks like REM sleep is the time when we go from the basic skill level, if you will, from the basic elements of our memories to bigger picture. What does it mean? How it fits, like how it relates to me personally? Does it have emotional valence? Right? And the disruption in REM sleep can disrupt that process.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the more neurons that animal possesses, or not animal, I guess, organism possesses, the more REM or active sleeping they will have, because there's more neurons that need to be processed.
It's not
is that where the correlation with intelligence comes in?
Yes, kind of, and that
could make logical sense, yeah.
Right. So that self-activation state of the brain becomes very important for being flexible and adapting to your environment better. It's not that linear. We have like marine mammals who spend time deep diving, and they sleep there. They don't have REM sleep, or very, very minimal, if at all, because if they start having REM sleep and get muscle atonia, they'll drown.
Well, some of the fish, they sleep half of their brain at a time, which is
not
fascinating.
Fish. I think it's mammals.
Yeah.
I think it's marine mammals who need to come out and take a breath.
Okay.
And you know what also? Migrating birds. During the time of long-distance migration.
They'll sleep flying, right?
That's right.
In cruise control.
No REM sleep. No REM sleep.
Okay.
And when they land and live on land, they start having REM sleep.
And then they start having REM sleep. That is fascinating. That's and REM is the brain's opportunity to kind of rebuild itself, to heal from the day's trauma, to process and to create pathways that are, healthy pathways.
Reorganize pathways. Heal.
To make them more efficient.
Yeah, they cleaning toxins and, growing cells. That's more non-REM sleep.
So this is why insomnia causes so many negative effects. Drowse, inability to concentrate.
Right, it becomes kind of a vicious cycle.
The brain hasn't had an opportunity to heal itself, reorganize itself.
Right.
It's all just oatmeal.
Yes, a little bit like that. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle with insomnia, because that emotional dysregulation that you get from not getting enough sleep can contribute to, more anxiety about not sleeping and not being able to sleep. So breaking out of that vicious cycle is not easy.
So, where I was going with this, and we'll wrap up on that, is, do you think, so basically intelligence is a precursor to dreaming or REM? Well, I guess I use REM and dreaming kind of interchangeably because you need to have REM to dream. So dreaming is like assuming you're in REM sleep, right?
Intelligence and dreaming, in my mind at least, go together, but not even as much because of REM sleep. REM sleep and intelligence, I think, there's decent evidence go together. But again, it's not a linear relationship. But there's one thing that you said I really want to address.
We're talking about interspecies,
Mm-hmm.
not like people with low IQ, for example, have less REM sleep than people with high IQ, right?
Well, learning in humans is associated with like more REM sleep, like acute intensive learning can drive an increase in REM sleep.
And that's the quality of REM sleep, not the quantity, right? Everyone still needs 8 hours regardless of
Well, you get like as an adult, you get like 20 to 25% of REM sleep, but you can slightly increase that percentage by engaging in new experiences and kind of learning. Emotional events can drive REM sleep, and it's not a linear correlation by any stretch of imagination. But there's one thing that you said, that dreaming and REM sleep, they are related, but they are not. There's a difference.
Okay.
Dreaming may occur in other stages of sleep. It may be qualitatively different. Like when you're awake, you may have qualitatively different states. When you're more focused on the task, or when you're kind of more mind-wandering and kind of daydreaming.
Like daydreaming.
Yeah. And non-REM and REM cognitive machinery, it's still, there's some kind of degree of processing. If you shake somebody out of non-REM sleep, and they will, usually they will tell you some sort of I think there was something on my mind. I was thinking I need to like pay that bill finally. Right, it's been sitting on my desk for too long, right? But it's not going to be a very vivid, extensive story. Right, it's going to be like more thought-like, a little bit repetitive, and relatively short report. Right. Whereas if you shake somebody out of REM sleep, that's when you get like visuals and probably auditory and maybe some kinesthetic experiences, and maybe somebody else was present and we were talking. I don't remember what exactly we were saying, but there may be some. So in REM sleep, dreams seem to have qualitatively different sort of, different quality. Sorry, but
because dreaming is not a property of REM, dreaming is a property of the human existence.
Right.
And REM is more about the brain kind of going through and reorganizing itself through active processes.
Dreaming is subjective experience that we may or may not remember when we wake up.
Because the lucid dreaming occurs within the last 5 minutes, right? And then, roughly.
I'm not sure about.
That's what I've read.
I think people can
which is
in
not
that
the
state.
same time when REM occurs. So it's just different altogether.
My understanding of lucid dreaming is that it's pretty REM related. Your cortex have to be activated, which is sort of acetylcholine's job, right? There's more norepinephrine in the frontal cortex. My understanding of lucid dreaming, there's norepinephrine in normal non-lucid dreamers in the prefrontal cortex tends to either lead them towards just waking up, right, or create nightmares. High level of norepinephrine in the prefrontal cortex during REM sleep seems to be associated with nightmares. But it also can give people the opportunity to people who have kind of idiopathic or sometimes in trauma-related nightmares, they seem to have more likelihood of lucid dreaming, and sometimes they can use lucid dreaming to heal their nightmares or minimize their nightmares. It gives you an opportunity to kind of like, this seems to be a dream. The TV set starts to kind of fly across the room and it's not falling. I'm like lifting up from I'm moving my phone with my gaze. So people kind of start questioning, it's like, oh, it's a dream. I'm in the dream world. right? And they get the sense. I had like 1 or 2 lucid dreams in my whole life, and I tried to train, and I kind of, but it gives you that sense of weird observation of the reality, which is you realize this is not real, and then you wake up and you're like, is this real? Right, or is it just some kind of a quantum field bunching up in front of my face, right?
The collapse of the particle. Or even how do I get back into that lucid state?
Right.
Because those dreams are always the best.
You have lucid dreams?
Well, I used to, yeah. Are nightmares, because that's something that you work with quite...
I work sometimes with nightmares, but I work with them. I try to help people to reduce the frequency of their nightmares. And there's there are a couple of methods. One is...
Are those usually always trauma-related?
Not always. And trauma is there's a pretty kind of standard definition of trauma, and there's also kind of experiential. The way we use the word trauma is a little loosey-goosey in the public discourse. But, sometimes we don't know. We don't know. People forget. People don't want to remember. People, and we all, again, if you open that definition to any experience that made you feel afraid of life on a kind of big scale, it doesn't have to be like seeing your friend being blown up by a bomb, or like having your mother or sister being raped.
Can be very,
they can accumulate as well, right? They can accumulate, and traumas to self-esteem can be kind of lasting, right?
I feel like we could, branch off and...
Sorry.
For so long, no, I know, I apologize. But, I want to take a step back and just kind of finish the previous thought I had before I went on a tangent, before I branched off. So the reason I'm asking about the correlation between dreaming and intelligence is because, artificial intelligence right now has become so popular. And it really makes you kind of question or start to, or at least for me, it makes me start to question, what is intelligence even, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stay away from all the quantum.
Right.
From the quantum understanding, because if we are, if our bodies, maybe a little bit, I'll talk about it. If we are 3-dimensional vessels traveling through the 4th dimension of time, our bodies create electromagnetic fields.
Okay.
So there's magnetism, right, as we're traveling through. I mean, sometimes when a person walks into the room, you just feel their presence, right? I mean, this is all just general, just what's in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just trying to tie this into intelligence. So I don't know, I just started thinking that the whole universe is conscious. And intelligence becomes more of like a fluid kind of concept. So I'm just trying to understand
conscious
where...
and intelligent. I think we really lacking...
I know, I'm...
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think it really kind of exposes the problem that we're having.
Is that we don't actually understand...
We don't have good operational definitions. We didn't used to have good operational definitions for what life is. Mm-hmm. Now we kind of do. And there are still on the outskirts of those definitions, there are debates, is virus life, or is it like, kind of, I'm not going to solve that problem. Right.
It needs a host. Therefore,
yes,
it is not life.
Right. But right, it has genetic material. It can interact with its environment. It has sort of its own kind of goal and purpose. You can't from where I'm standing, and I know some people who could say that, but I cannot say with all. I try to keep open mind and quantum fields and universal consciousness and panpsychism, but I cannot say that rock rolling down the hill, like because of gravity, that it has its own purpose. Virus seems to be a little bit more purposeful than that. But again, where do you make that distinction? We are the ones, not you and I, but people who study these things, at some point they establish this is the definition, this is how we define life. Okay, and maybe there is something that doesn't quite fit, which is fine. Any developed system has these kind of things that don't quite fit into it, and I think that's been proven mathematically, right? But the same thing with emotions. What is emotions? Who knows? Like some, 150 years ago, it's like we don't study emotions. It's like very subjective, right? It's beyond the realm of science. We study the brain, and I tweak this and you do that, right? And it's measurable and quantifiable. Now we have like all sorts of things that we know very measurable and quantifiable about emotions. Right, this whole thing of consciousness is intelligence, and we can argue about it. I think we still at the very, very kind of fetal stage of understanding. If you catch me outside of my kind of, lab coat or teaching coat and ask me, like, I guess this would be kind of in between, right? Do you think universe is conscious? I'm an agnostic. So I think universe might be conscious and self-conscious, and we just these tiny little, elements of that consciousness kind of trying to embed itself into physics or with whatever quantum fields, and and I'm going to be blabbering words I don't understand. Very admittedly, when I say quantum, I don't know anything about that.
I don't know anything about it either. I just know that quantum has great SEO.
yeah, right. But
quantum, now it's AI, right?
Right. And people
AI.
had these ideas for millennia, from like ancient Greeks. People had ideas like, or maybe even before that, right? Taoism, Buddhism.
Everyone is asking, why is this? Why do we exist, right? So that's kind of what it comes down to. And then now if we trace it back, it's to the Big Bang. But what caused the Big Bang? Right. And there has to be some kind of, quote unquote intelligence. That's why I'm saying I'm questioning what is intelligence. And this stems back to the question does artificial intelligence dream?
It hallucinates.
And I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask.
Right.
I'm not sure if there's anyone right person to ask.
I know language models.
Is a form of dreaming, right?
I'm not sure. Chemically induced states, they have this kind of a looseness to them that may be similar to dreaming. In dreaming, there's this kind of chemically different state of the brain during REM sleep, let me say, during REM sleep and the REM type of dreaming, this kind of vivid, somewhat illogical. Not all REM dreams are illogical or bizarre, or we remember them better because, that was bizarre. I dream sporadically, but the dream that I really remember from some years ago when I was lying on the table, open up like a, prepared rat, and my biology teacher was standing next to me showing the class, like, this is the heart, this is
my God.
And I was completely not scared. That's a funny thing about dreams, that we think they're emotional, but when we analyze content, they're not that emotional. Even when they start getting emotional, like really scary, so we tend to wake up. But the content, we assign emotions in our waking retelling of those dreams. Like, I must have been scared.
Is that so? That's why we never die in our sleep, is because we wake up before
kind of, yes,
before we die.
Yeah, right. We just kind of jump out of it, like from the Matrix. Yeah.
But then they pull the bug out of our stomachs anyway.
Yes. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. Yeah.
Is anything like Inception possible in real life? Can we implant?
Inception.
Because some
Yeah.
people swear they listen to they study for an exam by listening to a series in their sleep, but that isn't
This
right.
this is what's right. That my understanding of science is that if you have sensory experiences while you're studying being awake, while you're awake, you're studying, you're trying to learn some task or memorize some material, and there is a certain sensory experience that becomes associated with it. You can improve that memory by introducing that same sensory experience.
Like with smells, right?
Smells, certain tones, like
Taste.
music, possibly.
Sure.
I'm not sure how you would introduce a taste to a sleeping person, but
I'm not sure, but with memories.
yes, they
Yeah.
call it targeted memory reactivation, and it's been shown. I'm not sure how much of an increase in your memory
Someone
score.
could put like a piece of chocolate or a lemon drop or something while you're asleep. I don't know.
Like
But-
as
but
long
you're-
as you don't choke on that stuff, yeah.
on your saliva. But so you're saying that would activate those neural pathways.
Yes.
Interesting.
That sensory input, even when you're sleeping, and you can do it in non-REM sleep, you can do it in REM sleep and see somewhat different effects, but
And this works.
it works. What do people mean when they say it works? When you take a sleeping pill.
You can't train someone like new skills. I understand that. But
Yeah. There has to be
very
some
mildly
foundation. And the gain that you get
reinforces.
from this type of approach, it's a little bit like this.
Mhm.
The gain, I don't know what the effect size is, right?
Sure.
The effect size may be much better if you start studying not the night before the test, but a month earlier and do it consistently and do that with, in neural net models, they call interleaved learning. And you learn something, then you step back and you allow your brain to kind of reshuffle and reorganize that information, and you learn it again, then you
It's
step
like
back
building
again.
muscles.
Yes, you have to give it rest to rebuild, and then you pump it again, and then, you cannot do it in one day.
Mhm.
Just like gonna kill yourself, and the muscle is still gonna be what it is. That's partly why you did mention that I'm lenient. I don't know if I'm lenient. I gave a lot of extra credits for people getting engaged in repetition of the same material. You get like a preview of the kind of a mock version of the upcoming test, then you review that, then you have the test, then you post-view the test. So there's multiple exposures. I use it as a tool. And people who want to be engaged, I think that helps them. And there are always people who just like, I just want my grade and get out of here. And I can't really help that. I try to emotionally engage them. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm not sure lenient is really the right word, because you did really, we all learned so much in your class. So it was a very demanding course. It was a very difficult course.
It should be demanding.
But your approach was very much making learning the priority, and you created an atmosphere. You actively created an atmosphere where it was a low-stress environment.
Repetition, I
But
think,
yeah,
makes a difference. But if you just do rote repetition, it's kind of daunting and but repetition with some variability, connecting it to your real-life events, and throwing in some quantum
And
field.
also how available you made yourself to the class, staying after the class for a long time.
Sometimes longer than I should probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to foster that approach to life. And my wife sometimes kind of scolds me for it because people take advantage of you. And I kind of know that, but I don't think most people take advantage. I think some people take advantage more like in a good way. They kind of use it to actually... We all struggle to just get through basics of life. And I grew up in a kind of very strict system, right? That Soviet system.
Oh, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad, but there
I'm
were
joking.
some.
I didn't grow up in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was awful.
One Dostoevsky's character said, and it's not kind of an American way by any stretch of imagination, but I try to kind of foster that sense. The character said, people need to be approached as children on the playground and some as patients in the ward. So you really have to be like, and in my therapy, I mean, that's my job to be that way, right? Interacting with students, a little bit different. Yes, you do need to provide maybe stronger structure, the goals, I'm not your therapist and so forth. But there's some degree of like, I want to be understood as a person. I want to understand you as a person. And if we don't make that effort, like, what are we doing here? Like cha-ching and go home and enjoy your Netflix or whatever video.
A lot of professors do that. It's
I think they got jaded.
crazy.
I think people want to do better, but they kind of lose the. I have arguments. Just today, I had a conversation with one professor, and we kind of talked about like how much do you want to put yourself out for people. I think we'll have a society that fosters like I'm out for myself.
Capitalism,
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, we have labels for that. Capitalism, socialism, this, that.
Yeah.
In Soviet Russia, it was the same thing. Because people were not, some people were, but many people were not true believers, you might say. They were using slogans and waving flags, but they were still doing what they're doing. Maybe neuroscience will give us better answers how we can foster that in people.
I think universal basic income is going to give people enough free time to really think about these
There's
things.
a little bit of that. But what is basic is also social agreement.
Yeah.
If it's basic to have a car per person in the family, then people who don't have it will feel diminished and marginalized and somehow
Oppressed.
I mean, there's some real forms of oppression. There's more this kind of like, oh, I'm behind. I come from, I foster a little bit more of that kind of Buddhist or if like one Tao, like, you have what you need. And if you don't have it, maybe you don't really need it that much. And I'm not a consumer, I consume what I need and I consume what my family needs and I live in this kind of consumerism driven environment. But I take a very intentional stance against it, sometimes at my expense. And my wife points it out. She grew up in the United States. Boris, it's your expense. Like, you know what? We are good. We have food, we have shelter, we have clothes, we have each other. We are really not like, and we have savings. We are okay, right? We have jobs that we kind of enjoy doing. Like what can you want in life?
Yeah. Sounds like you are really trying to minimize your carbon footprint.
I do.
And at your expense, but what is it that's being expended, right? Your time, your energy.
Right.
These are. I mean, time is an illusion, right? The things that you're getting, the karma, the good karma, the positive energy, people thinking back with positive thoughts and intentions about you, I think that is valuable, So as opposed to what? As opposed to having a negative experience from with your students, not giving them enough time,
right.
Creating the stress, the kind of heavy.
Right, that's interaction
energy.
with students.
So I mean, I mean, I do understand the balance, but I would rather be on the people taking advantage of me and everything valuable that comes along with that, than not giving enough of myself and everything bad that comes with that.
And I'm not giving more than I can afford.
Right.
That's like I'm very cognizant. Like there is certain degree of need that I do take care of myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
If we are in a really really
Are
impoverished.
you getting enough sleep?
I probably don't get enough sleep. Probably not. Right. But I think it's important to recognize that, you have to have resources to share something. Otherwise you really driving yourself to the ground, or you're doing it for the sake of just kind of doing it.
And I think a testament to your devotion to your family is your younger daughter using such advanced knowledge of awareness of her own brain to her teachers.
Suprachiasmatic nucleus, yeah, that's kind of a...
So I think that's a testament to your, character. So.
Thank you.
Is there, as we're wrapping up, is there anything that you want to share in your last thoughts, and then we can talk, and then we could touch on how people can follow you or find you?
Oh, right.
I mean, I know you don't use social media, but you want to talk about the clinic,
fine,
and if anyone is struggling to
yes,
contact
yes.
and the work that you do. So
Right.
start
People
with final
do
thoughts.
find me, and I get clients and so forth. The last thought, as a sleep specialist, behavioral sleep specialist, I think that was
anything you want.
Because my personal musings are, what they are. Right. Like your sleep as a good friend, and invest in that relationship. And your friend may not always be there for you. Sometimes they're tired, sometimes they're moody, sometimes they need your help.
Consider the act of sleeping as your friend, to build a personal relationship. With
yeah. But that relationship is also, like I mentioned, you understand these three basic things. Circadian rhythmicity, so whatever
knowing your body and knowing your rhythm.
Right. Whatever your chronotype is, try to kind of work with that, right? Improve that homeostatic sleep drive by,
listening to your body, understanding when you need to conserve energy, when you need to expand energy, going to sleep only when you're tired,
right?
Creating your bed as a sacred sleeping space,
right?
Building the physical
removing all the stimulations from the bed, finding content that's soothing, not visual. Visual is almost never soothing unless you read a plain text. Like anything that's moving, blinking at you, flashing, not
meditation.
Soothing. Fantastic tool.
Fantastic tool.
You don't have to be like music. You don't have to play in Carnegie Hall to benefit from some early life music training. You don't.
I remember I took meditation classes many years ago, and it was a 1 hour meditation, but afterwards I felt like I had taken a nap. Are you familiar with this?
You feel kind of re-energized. There's evidence that during meditation you release GABA, some parts of so your cortex does kind of rest here and there.
And you're saying meditation is fantastic for creating a quality of sleep when you then do sleep? Because
it's fantastic to create kind of quality of life in general.
Yeah.
People who teach meditation for spiritual purposes probably wouldn't like my approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked into, this and that. If you think of it as a tool that helps you organize your own consciousness, be a little bit more coherent within yourself, which we often aren't, right? You start realizing yeah, I am more kind of on top of my drives instead of my drives driving me, right? I can organize and wind down when I plan to, as opposed to when funny cat videos stop blaring at me, right?
They never stop.
They never, that's the problem. They never stop because, this thing wants you to be plugged in 24/7 until, like that rat in Olds and Milner experiments, right? They kept pressing the lever until they were no more, right? And
So they're dead. How do we break that cycle? I know before you mentioned someone has to help, but is there some?
yeah, if you really feel you cannot do it yourself, right, you don't have to go to a therapist. I think a therapist is a nice stop, and it's been very popular. I've been, right.
Like an ice plunge or something.
Yeah, you can engage in things that you like, kind of
Shock
not
therapy?
for immediate pleasure, but for something that's a little bit more meaningful, whatever it is. Something that you, in your mind,
Meaningful, as in some action that will create a reward system that will
most often, when we run in this kind of externally driven
accomplishments.
matrix simulation, whatever,
Yeah,
the reality that we think is real, right?
Tell me what is real.
Right, when we run in it, we really driven by this like immediate spikes of dopamine and satisfaction, like, then followed by a little bit of serotonin, and then it's the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and it kind of becomes that, cycle, that wheel that we keep right, and then we kind of like, what am I doing it for, right? And people have a million answers, like, I want a bigger this and then more of that, and yeah. But if you really stop and think, and almost everyone who stops, like, they would tell you, yeah, it gives me this like temporary sense of pleasure, but then I really don't find anything on the other side, and then I come back to try to repeat it again. Anything that speaks in your mind to a bigger purpose, whatever it is. And if you try to practice it for a little bit and say, okay, I'm gonna...
that would be enough to give you that peace of mind to help you kind of fall asleep at night, would it?
It can start anchoring you. I don't use it as...
I would think.
I sometimes mention it to my clients who bring those existential questions up in therapy. Sometimes I really try to listen to where my clients are. Mm-hmm. Right now we have this loosey-goosey conversation, so I'm letting myself. When I work with clients, I try to be attuned to where they are. And some people, they don't want existential questions. They want, like, tell me how I can solve this problem and I can go do what I'm doing. I'm like, fine, they come off with that. Some people are more willing to, like, share their life issues and their kind of psychological struggles and their, other types of struggles. And they listen to that and it's like, okay, I play a little bit of that, how does it relate to your sleep? How do you put those things to sleep first so you can sleep? And there are some standard tools, including journaling, right? It's like very standard thing in the sleep specialist toolbox.
Creating a to-do list for yourself at the end of the day, for the next day, kind of mentally preparing yourself for the next day, right, and visualizing the next day.
Right. And giving yourself a little bit of space, insert in there something that, like, this thing is going well. It's not just to do. But it's like, okay, like, what have I done that, makes me feel okay?
This is very interesting because in REM sleep, the brain physically pushes the chemicals around to reorganize your brain and everything like this. Is there a practice where, as you're trying to fall asleep, you can somehow stimulate mentally that precursor to REM? Maybe like start processing, maybe start thinking about the day, and
Um,
is there anything you could like jumpstart that REM into
well,
REM?
like you cannot really jumpstart REM. There are no substances. There's a medicine, the Nepizil, that promotes acetylcholine transmission, and that can increase REM sleep, but it's kind of a byproduct. It's given for people to improve memory, right, during the day. But REM sleep, you don't want to engage in anxious, spinning the wheel kind of thoughts, but you do want to have kind of a mental content that again enables you to reconnect with some sort of personal meaning. Meaning is always, we create meaning. Connect with something that feels personally meaningful. If you're working on a creative task, it's good to have a creative task that diverts you from like, is my bill paid? Is this, I need to fix my car.
So thinking more about the accomplishments and the positive things.
And something, even if that creativity is like,
That's true. If we start thinking back on the day, there's a lot of emotions that come up with that you're trying to avoid to fall asleep.
Right.
Probably.
I listen to some literary lectures before sleep, some history lectures sometimes, or just novels, even familiar novels. Gogol.
Are there any movies or I guess, is it different for everyone? What kind of media we can watch or listen to? It's different for everyone.
Watching is a little tricky but 30% of our cortex is very visual, and moving images are particularly spiking your alertness.
Because some people rewatch maybe episodes of Friends or something because that's kind of their comfort zone. And
right.
Do you recommend doing that to help people fall asleep, or is it back to the visual stimulates the brain too much to help you fall
if
asleep?
they are heavily reliant on that visual stimulation, what I do this kind of gradual withdrawal. I say, I think wrapping things up. I ask them to try to listen more, kind of look away. If it's the same show, they keep watching, like, watch less, cover your eyes, listen, then tone the volume.
Like a sleep mask, maybe.
Yeah, or just even like some T-shirt. Put like a light T-shirt over your eyes. Less visual, more listening.
Kind of taper away from that.
Yes, to taper away. Because people feel like as soon as they turn it off, I'm like this. And how do I I understand why it's not great.
Yeah.
Kind of like quitting smoking when you use a cigarette to reduce your anxiety. Right? How do I jump across that abyss? It feels
slightly
terrifying.
Taper off and then kind of work on the things that cause the stress that you're trying to cope with.
Right.
So you're mostly in two places then, Hunter College, and Hunter College is just the
right. I
neuroscience
teach
class.
one class at Hunter Neuroscience. I also teach a sleep course at City College. It's like master's level course, and they admit like MA, BA, MA students into that cool. as well.
Okay.
Right. And I see clients at Methodist Hospital in Brooklyn, Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, part of the NYP system. And I also part of a private lab, New York Metro Sleep in the Bronx. Right, and I've been providing services there as well. I'm a little all over the place. It's been like that.
No, it's it seems all in one field. The difference between how they perceive and I don't know if you want to talk about like your findings in that, or if you're just
we're just kind of starting to look in that direction. We know it doesn't match very well. Subjective perception of sleep is correlated more with mood, pain experience, these kind of things that mood and pain are also subjective, right? So it's almost like
a spiritual zanoza.
Yes. People think about it as, is it a cognitive bias? Is it this kind of emotional state where everything looks half full, or half empty rather, right? Like you can attach this kind of negative labels everywhere. And people also look into kind of more subtle brain measures, and that's where I would like to try to peak.
I mean, there's got to be also dietary, influences on.
There's some research into that. It's outside of my direct kind of.
Yeah, that's okay. I know I'm just really fascinated by this topic in general, but we'll wrap up. I mean, we already wrapped up. We recorded the ending, so I'm just going to cut that in.
That's fine.
Are there any ways that we can change the culture to improve people's sleep quality, or is there a cultural aspect? Because in America, there's statistically more coffee being drunk. Maybe drug use, tobacco.
Right, I'm sure. I'm sure there are many places in Europe,
but then also
Russia,
it's the rat race in America. I think stress is higher in America than it is in Europe or other parts of the world.
Well, I understand in Japan also, like in industrial areas, sleep is not a priority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, rat race is a big issue because our brain is very plastic.
We're not rats.
We're not rats,
that
but
makes it an issue.
Yeah, right. But our brain
we've got ourselves involved in a race that we just not evolved.
We kind of are and we aren't. That's the problem. We try to monetize every which way, every possible weakness of the brain. And then we wonder why we have, mental health going down the drain, and sleep goes down the drain, and right, why we hate each other so much. We're constantly at each other's throats. Why? We don't need to be that. And people, that's human nature. Human nature is what you make of it.
Human nature is roaming, traveling the earth, and hunting and gathering, essentially, is what it's always been.
Yes.
And we're not meant to be in a cubicle. This is a conversation that, for decades. I remember, early 2000s, late 90s, I was growing up and listening to, commentary about
through
how we've not evolved.
Yeah.
And this is why mental health crises are, becoming worse. So.
Yeah.
And
we're squeezing our brains in ways that they kind of weren't meant. And it's not necessarily, yes, you can train yourself to do various things. And it's good to train your brain and to train your body, but with a purpose. What we're doing, the main purpose is to monetize whatever you possibly can. And that creates, again, like that old
an
experiment
economy that reinforces this negative, behavior, or unhealthy behavior, rather.
Right. And that economy doesn't benefit most people, in my opinion, my very humble non-economist opinion, and it doesn't even benefit those people who think they're on top of that food chain. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
They don't look happy to me. They look traumatized. They look like people who, they may present themselves, but they look traumatized. And that's partly why they do all the things that we read exposés about, because they don't know what else to do with themselves. They're not happy.
Yeah.
They're not.
It reminds me of that commercial with the McDonald's CEO. Have you seen this recently? Like a couple weeks ago. McDonald's CEO is, commercial, having a Happy Meal or a Big Mac or McDonald's something, and he just takes a superficial, just like of the bun, just like this is so good, and you could tell it's so fake, and he doesn't eat McDonald's.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yes, I
that's
remember
the
that.
kind
He
of
has like
crap.
expose that he said something like this food is terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of the atmosphere, that's the economy that we're living in. It's these billionaires, the CEOs of the companies, they don't consume their own products, and millions of
And
other
people who make
are
decisions to
suffering.
send other people to die don't send their own children. Sorry, I said that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
heavy.
a leap.
That's a heavy hit, but yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But I wonder, how do these people sleep at night?
I hope you do think about this, because this is the kind of things I would expect you to be thinking about.
right. And
probably with
in my
Ambien.
very passive aggressive
Probably.
kind of traumatized
Yeah,
Russian Jew way, I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because they're still human, because they're still life, and because if they did have a moral compass, then they would improve people's lives and not make other people's worse.
And we know that there are better examples of politicians that can try better and have done better. And they're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But there's some kind of... maybe neuroscience will help us solve this. How we make...
Maybe. I would love it if, there was a kind of shift in culture, because I remember in the early 2000s there was a huge push during the time where the media and the government was going after big tobacco. And then there was a huge movement to quit smoking. There was a huge movement towards just a more healthy lifestyle. Yoga and meditation became more popular. Of course, it came with its negative side effects, which is, the whole woke movement kind of stemmed from that, but I think we've kind of balanced out with that.
We do need to balance ourselves, yes.
So do you think there's any kind of cultural... what would you recommend people... do you think there's any hope? I mean, of course there's hope, but we'd have to... What topic should we kind of emphasize more of to... Hey, boss.
Just want to let you
We're
know.
wrapping up.
Cool.
Yeah, I forgot. Thank you.
Really pushing it.
Yeah, we were supposed to be done 10 minutes ago. Please stop me at the next one. I guess we should just finish this thought.
Wow, you're asking a lot from me, a lot.
It's a big one?
It's a huge one, because
Now,
I don't think any person has that.
Is there anything that you personally would like to see more of in maybe the media or just the general conversation in terms of sleep health?
Oh, sleep health.
Yeah.
Okay, not just like making the world better for
No.
everybody.
No.
Because
We're
I'm
just
like, let me
sleep
put
health.
whatever
Sleep
hairs
health.
I have left. As far as sleep health, treat it with respect and understanding, not with anxiety and performance drive, because that, it's the same with, establishing good eating habits, establishing good exercise routine. If you're really anxious, like, am I doing the right thing? Right? Am I buying the right product? And you're constantly that self-judging. You're not coming from a place where you can actually improve your function. Right. And even if the function kind of gets better after all this like bombardment and the pushing against the wall, you still feel kind of unsatisfied. But if you come from this comfortable, like music practice, I think that's a very good example for many people. Yeah, I practiced music as a child, and I kind of enjoyed my Twinkle Twinkle, and it kind of helped me in some ways, and it made me appreciate things better. And you embrace it to whatever level you could, you're in a good place. But if you feel that, I failed this competition, and, my teacher was not happy, or like something else, my parents weren't happy that they didn't get to the level they want, no matter how good you are, you're not going to be in a good mental place. So it's really being kind of acting as one unit with yourself in peace, right? I think that's the most important thing in life. And then we project that to other people. I really try hard to project that self-love that you can share with others, because we all the same quantum field, if you really want to go that far, right? We're all part of that universal consciousness that kind of laughs at itself and probably laughs at us a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, no, perfect. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out of ATP. My brain just
It's
shut down.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. I think we could wrap up and cut. Right? Oh, cool.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me blabber about all sorts of things.